Glorious Korea lovers, 안녕하세요. This is Jeannie Gloria Lee. Long time no see. As I mentioned previously, today we are going to talk about the stories of 3 countries. And among them, we are going to deal with the country named Goguryeo today, which is the northern part of the country previously. And then now, the 3 countries consist of Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla, which is Goguryeo being the upper part, where the head of our how do you say? Our map, yes. So head part, the middle part was actually Baekje, and the last part where there's Gyeongsang province and downward is Go-Silla. And we are going to talk about the other parts later on in the episodes. And also, sorry about, I'm still very, I'm not really well, so just for today, I'm going to, be mysterious and then won't be able to show you how I look today. But instead, I hope you listen to this beautiful music. It's called Kayagun, one of the old music with it's an instrument that's been in Korea for a long time. Okay, let's begin. If you remember the episode 1, we had the story of Dangun Shina, the founder of Gojoseon, the country previous to Goguryeo, which is and then if you the book that we talked about, 삼국사기 and 삼국유사, the story of founding of Goguryeo is inside the book. The first book called 삼국사기 is a book that was established in the King Injong 23rd year of King Injong, and it was made in the 1145 by Kim Bushik. The King Injong asked him to make the book, and then it had the story of Goguryeo with 10 books of Goguryeo and 6 books of Baekje, and then had 12 books of Silla and Silla, which is the reunification of Silla. So the total of 50 books. Okay. And the name Samguk means 3 countries. Sa means history, and Ki is to write down or record the things. Okay, so on the other hand, the story we're going to talk about today was inside this book called 삼국유사. 유 actually means to record or to leave the document or leave the history, and sa is, of course, history. Yeah. The person who wrote this book is called, it's a Buddhist monk or Buddhist father named Iran. And then Iran wrote this book in 1281. The year of King Chungnyeol, 7th year of King Chungnyeol, and then 삼국유사 actually had 5 books. It's a history book, consists of 5 history. And then, as I mentioned previously, Dangun, the myth of Dangun, is also inside these books. Alright. When the priest Iran wrote this book, the history, the Mongolia and Genghis Khan, if you remember Temujin, they were feisty and they had wars and they invaded the Goguryeo apart 6 times. And then Goguryeo actually was part of Mongolia, and then they had a really difficult, so it's sort of like a colonization, and then they were considered what's in Korean called Bumaguk, the Sun Country. Alright. And then it was really difficult time for them. The priest Iron actually had a name Goguryeo as a child, and then he was born in 1206. And then it's a story. Then he was just one of the priests, the Buddhist priests living in different parts of the temple at a time. But it wasn't until he was 78 that he established and he published this book. He worked on it, and then it became one of the histories. After the fall of Gojoseon, the history, or the time for the 3 countries that has begun. And the first country was Goguryeo for Korea, and the second country that appeared is called Buyeo. Buyeo actually was established 3 BC, and it lasts from 198 94 to 494 to lasted from 3 century to the 494 BC. So it lasted about 600 years. We have no idea where Buyeo is now exactly, but as the stories are told, it's near China, Mongolia, Manchukuo, and it's near the Songbai River. It's a big plain area where the river is Songha River. Buyeo, when the Gojoseon was being failed, or it was being diminished, Buyeo had a very strong power, and then they had big plains with a lot of cattle, and they were known for having to raise the cattle and sheep and other animals really well. So anyway, so what happens to Goguryeo? How was it made? If you take a look at, or if you consider the history of the world, compared to the Western civilization, BC, as you know, BC, you would have to count their number backwards. So 44 BC, around there in Roma, the Caesar was actually assassinated, and then maybe 10 years afterwards, the Roman Antonius and then Cleopatra got married. some funny history, but anyway, so the establishment of Goguryeo was around there, between there, so it was made in the year 36 BC. Okay, well, it's a very interesting story. After Gojoseon has failed, there was 3 countries. And then these 3 countries, 고구려, 백제, 신라 was it lasted for 700 years, and then they would continue our history as Korea. The name Goguryeo actually is Korea, which means nowadays we call it Korea, Korea. So it actually was taken from that. And then while those 3 countries are called 삼국, 3 countries. 시대 means 삼국 시대, so the time of 3 countries. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about 2 other countries, 백제 and 신라, but today we will focus on the founding myth of Goguryeo, which is the story of Gojumong. Tada! The Gojumong, actually. So 부여, 고구려, 옥저, 동해, 진한, 마한, and 변한, those were the names of the countries. It's not very important, so I'm just going to go fast. Let's go to the story. Okay? The king of 부여, his name was 해구루. 해구루 actually didn't have a son to, continue his throne. So he was worried. And then he would have rituals, and then, he would ask God to, give him son. It was his biggest worries, And one day when he was having rituals, 해구루, the king, was walking on the street and found this golden frog. The baby actually was, he looked like a golden frog. And then this son, golden frog, 해구루 took him and then, said, okay, he's my son. He raised him. So the name, the frog that has a golden, and then that's why it's called 금와. 금 means gold and 와 means frog. So he was called a 금와. So 금와, after 해구루, became the king of 부여. And when King Kumwa was walking around the palace and then walking, and as we mentioned, you remember last time we talked about Taebaek Mountain, the sacred mountain of Korea, where like Dangung came down to Shindansu and all that. So in the south part of Taebaek Mountain, Kumwa found this creek, a river called 우발수. And then in this river called 우발수, there was this lady, a woman called Yuha, and she was the son of Habek, who would rule over the water. So the water god, Habek's daughter Yuha. So Kumwa met Yuha. Actually, Yuha hid between and met this man, a son called Hemosu, and he was the son of the god who would rule over the sky. And Yuha met Chunche and Yuha met Hemosu and had his child, a baby. Alright? And then the king, Yuha's father got angry at his daughter, and then she was to leave home. And then Kumwa actually met Yuha, right? And then so King Kumwa brought Yuha to the palace and then let her have the child there. not his son, Hemosu's son. And something really funny happened. Yua bared not a human baby, but a big egg. So the king Kumwa was surprised. Can you imagine? So he asked people to just throw the egg away. But the egg, when it was, thrown into somewhere, and then like the dogs or pigs and other animals, they were hiding from it. They wouldn't, attack it. And then something funny, because the egg would not break even with the hard rock. And King Kuma thought, this is a very sacred egg, so he gave it back to Yuha, so Yuha got it back. And for a few months later, inside the egg, there was this little boy who was born. And then he was a good looking, and then he was very, strong man, boy. And then he grew up to be a very strong and talented young man. And especially, he was good at archery, doing them. And that's why he was named Jumong. He could shoot the arrow really fast, like a Roman note. So Jumong means in Puyo language, a man who could shoot the arrow really well. So Jumong. Jumong, who was born in the egg, wasn't the real son of the King Kumwa, right? Going back to the story, Kumwa is a king that came from, they look like a golden frog, right? Kumwa had 7 sons, and then they were not actually blood-related brothers. And then the 7 princes were worried that, because Jumong had so much skills and he was strong, and they were worried that he might take over the throne. They didn't want to, have Jumong to be a king. So, secretly, they wanted to kill Jumong. And then Jumong found out about it. He was worried, he might get killed. So he had his troops, armies, and he fled and he escaped from Puyo to go somewhere, find his own land. And he was worried. And when he was, trying to find the land, he was on this quest. And then he came to this river called Omshi-su. And then you have to actually cross the river without, a boat. And that's a very difficult thing. And then, in order for him to cross Omshi-su, the river, there was his other brothers, the princes, following him, and he was in a bad situation, right? And then Jumong shouted, I'm the son and the grandson of Chanche and Habek. So, something really surprising happened. The fishes and turtles who were living inside the river, in Omshi-su River, they formed a bridge, surprisingly. And then he was able to cross the river thanks to the turtles and the, fishes. And after he crossed the river, they were gone. So the troops who were following him, and Jumong and his troops, they were, at a loss. So he arrived safely to a land called Cholbon near Amnok River, which is now part of China. So he met this man called 제사, 무골, 북거, and then they became his men. And then when Jumong arrived in Cholbon, he established the country, and then named it Goguryeo, Korea, and then he changed his last name to Ko. So that's how got his name, Gojumong. The first founder of Goguryeo, who was born in the egg. At the time, Gojumong was 22 years old. What can you actually learn from this story, this myth? Well, Goguryeo actually is a country that was cited from the second country of our country, Buyo. The first being Gojoseon, second being Buyo, and then Goguryeo is a third country. And inside the palace, inside the royals, there has been a little bit of conflict. Not a little bit, but a lot of conflict. And then that's why they actually came out of Buyo and established Goguryeo. Jumong also was partly not the actual reigning son, but part of the royal family. So it could be fact that he was a royal family. And then Jumong actually fought his King Kuma's sons, and he couldn't actually win. So he fled to Cholbon and then established Goguryeo, which was one of the strongest country of our nation. So Goguryeo, the people, it had rich history, and then people had strong pride, and then that's why he claimed that he was a son of Cheonche, and then the Cheonche and Haemosu became the ancestors to get the strong concrete background as profound country at the time. Well, let's think about what the turtles and fishes are. I also mentioned totemism, the last episode about Tangun, like the bear and tiger, and then at the time in Korea, the nature and animals were part of the very important aspects, right? So like again, the fishes and turtles were one of the tribes that were living in the river, right? And then also the men who met Jumong, such as 제사, 무골, 북골, were part of the tribe leaders who became the Jumong's men and to establish the country called Goguryeo. Right? And well, a little bit of history where Goguryeo had profound history, and then also Korean at the time, Korean people wore white clothes, and then they really enjoy wearing. That's why we call our ancestors 백의 민족, which is 백의 means white clothes, tribes or white clothes people. And that's what it is, Goguryeo. That's the founding. Is that funny? Like egg, a founder, a king who was born in an egg. Well, next time we are going to talk about story of 백제 and Silla. But do you know the king or the founder of Silla is also born from the egg. His name is 박혁거세. Yeah, the first king. And that's what happened. I hope you enjoyed the story because that's what it is. It sounds very different from many of the stories, but when you think of Roman myth or the Greek myth, there are stories, very interesting stories, like Venus was born from the ocean and the bubbles and those stories. So it's not really realistic, but it's fun to know our Korean history. Tangun actually was son of bear, and Gojumong a son of a frog, and Hemosu and Gojumong actually was born from the egg. Interesting. All right, so I'll come back with more stories and stories that are interesting and fun. And until next time, have a wonderful week. See you next week. Bye bye.